Hey, it's Paulie from the Brother Wease Show in Rochester, New York, and you're listening to the Friday Sports Riot on SportsTownChicago.com.
Oh, baby. What's up? This is the Friday Sports Riot on SportsTownChicago.com. I'm Ryan Hoppy.
I'm Ryan Stuppridge.
Call the show, 630-403-5200. That's 630-403-5200. And Ryan, let's get this going. Who do we have on the phone line right now?
From 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland, we have Ken Carman on the Illinois Center for Broadcasting hotline here on SportsTownChicago.com. What's going on, Ken?
Hey, guys. Nothing much. Just watching the news, taking the day off, and just trying to unwind.
Well, that sounds like a good day just to, relax and hang out. So we want to get your take on this. What is it like to see LeBron James to go back to the Cavaliers? How weird is that, or is it just like you're happy he's back? What is your take?
Oh, I really think it's just, it still is a little bit surreal there for a week, and now that, there's a lot of trade talk and things like that, I think it gets a lot more realistic just because you're kind of playing around how good he is and how good of a basketball player he's going to be for the next 4 or 5 years, and not just a great basketball player, but pretty much one of the all-timers and definitely the best of the generation. And I think we're kind of kicking the tires around on whether or not they're going to make him or put pieces around him that are going to help him win now, or whether they're going to build around for the later. And really, when you take a guy like that, I think you really got to build for the now. But as he is and as you see him right now, I think a lot of people are just excited, obviously, that he's here. I think it's still kind of setting in for everybody.
And what do you think LeBron James will bring to this current Cavaliers team?
I think it's leadership. Obviously, his talents are beyond belief in a lot of ways when it comes to this generation of basketball player. But I think there will be leadership. I think there will be that veteran presence that they need. And this was a team that, honestly, guys, they were fighting each other in the locker room. They were fighting each other outside the locker room. There was a lot of stuff that they just didn't like about each other. And I think a lot of it was youth and experience, talent, a little bit of talent. And with talent comes ego. And I thought that a lot of the problems that they had last year, they just seemed to get in their own way. For him, because he's so good and because he's a veteran, I just don't think there's any time for them to mess around, that they're all going to have to step up and fall in line at the same time, and it's going to be the same case with him. So I think for what he brings to that team, whether they make moves, whether they hold on to him, or whether they hold on to some of those young pieces that he still have, obviously, I think that all these guys become better players almost instantly getting set for next season.
Now, Ken, I want to get your take on this. Should they keep Andrew Wiggins? Because to me, he's got raw talent. He's just 19 years old, and I think LeBron would make some greatness out of him. Or do you want to trade for Kevin Love, who has already proven himself as a very good NBA player? What is your take, Ken?
Without a doubt, it's time to trade for Kevin Love.
Okay.
There's no way around it. And I know what they're giving up with Andrew Wiggins. I can't say that Andrew Wiggins is a big bag of garbage. When a month ago they took the guy number 1 overall, it just doesn't make that sense. If he's that bad, you're not taking the guy number 1 overall. Minnesota doesn't covet him that much, but Wiggins will be a great player. Wiggins will be a very good player, but he won't touch LeBron. He won't ever be as good as what LeBron James is. And LeBron going on now 30. He'll be 30. He's not 25. He'll be 30 now. Getting set for halfway through this season. So I think you do start to kind of wind your watch on his career, and I think that you start a stopwatch on how soon you can win a championship. And Kevin Love is already a proven commodity. He's already an Olympian and a three-time All-Star, and something that they need on the inside. We can preach defense. Defense is really based on drive. Defense is based a lot on hustle. And just because Wiggins is known for his defense, a lot of 19-year-old rookies, they get lost in that. So you may give up something 10 years from now, but since they haven't won a championship ever in the team's history, and the city hasn't won a championship in 50 years, I really think we're kind of putting mythical championships out there 10 years from now for what could be staring you in the face, especially right now. And if you get Kevin Love to sign long-term, and obviously LeBron to stay for a long period of time, I think you're looking at a run at multiple championships right now.
Do you think it was the right move to get a first-year NBA coach in David Blatt to coach this team, or do you think that the Cavs should have gone with a different route and get a veteran coach, somebody like Lionel Hollins or somebody like that?
I thought it was a little bit different, and I really like Lionel Hollins. I thought he did an exceptional job with Memphis. Him and Mark Jackson are kind of in the same boat where it wasn't based on what they did. I really thought it was based on the general manager and the ownership, especially Memphis. That guy's just Memphis. And for Lionel Hollins to get let go, and then David Yeager almost gets let go after this year, even though they seemed like they were able to patch things up. Both of those guys are phenomenal coaches, and both of those guys had good players, and it just seems like Memphis wants to get in their own way for whatever reason. I really liked Lionel Hollins, and he was my guy that I definitely wanted to cast. When I first heard of David Blatt, obviously I wasn't too thrilled with it, just because he's from Europe, or he coached in Europe for 30 years. He hasn't been in the NBA game. Anytime we don't know anything, we tend to get upset. We say it all the time that if I have a girlfriend or I have a wife, and I have a problem with my wife, and she won't tell me, or she has a problem with me and she won't tell me the problem, so our first reaction, usually for a lot of guys, is to get upset. And it's the same thing in sports. If I don't know something, it's my reaction to get upset about that. And I think that's what happened with David Blatt at the very beginning. But once you start to learn about the guy and you hear some of the things that's said about him, I think it's definitely an optimism. It's definitely that they want to give him a shot. And plus, it's not just about his offensive system and what he brings as a coach. It's also about how he relates to players. Now, he'll have to relate to players, and they'll have to fall in line with LeBron.
Now, let's move on to the NFL and talk some Browns. Your team out there in Cleveland hasn't had like a face, like a guy that you think of when you think of the Browns, because you just think of dysfunction. So you guys get Johnny Manziel in the draft. What is the chance, Ken, that he could come in, prove the haters wrong, and take over Cleveland? Or will he just be another bust, like another Tim Couch? What is your take?
It's going to be a little bit of a minute for him, because he's going to have to. He's got to get that starting job. And seeing him in OTAs this year, Brian Hoyer's just flat out better right now. He might be better for the future, and I think Johnny will be better for the future. But part of what he is makes him a lightning rod for controversy. Obviously, makes him a guy that a lot of people don't like. He is a guy that he does have a different way of carrying himself, and let's be honest, he's just a completely different style of quarterback than what we usually see. We want to compare him to Cam Newton. Okay, well, Cam Newton's a 6'5" monster. He's not 5'11" and 3/4. So you got to take the Cam Newton out of it. People want to compare him to Jamarcus Russell. That's unfair in a lot of ways, because Jamarcus Russell is one of the all-time greatest busts who have ever walked the face of the earth. For Johnny Manziel, it's going to take a lot of trust. It's going to take a lot of ingenuity with him and Kyle Shanahan. Eventually, he'll take the reins for this football team, but it's not going to come easy. And they're a better overall football team than they were last year and even the year before that. They're going to miss a lot with Josh Gordon, because he'll probably be gone for the season. But with Johnny Manziel eventually taking over, I think it's not just based on what the haters or the people who don't like him. I think he's got to prove it to himself and mostly that locker room, that he can be trusted, that he's going to be a guy who can get the football to him, and he's going to be a guy that not just wants to take off and run, but does what needs to be done within the parameters of the offense, but obviously use his skills and use them to the way that he was taken in the first round and taken to be a franchise quarterback. So there's going to be some give and take, and with that give and take, and because he's the type of quarterback he is, there's going to be some very heavy criticism for him, not just through his rookie year, but I think for the next couple of years, because he's just, for a lot of people. I like Johnny Manziel. I'm okay with Johnny Manziel. I think some of the stuff that's been said about him is unfounded, but there's just some people and guys in the media and analysts who just really, really dislike him. And when he goes out there and struggles, and he's going to struggle, there's going to be a lot of people lining up telling everybody that they told you so, that this guy's a bust. He's going to have to stick with his game plan and hopefully come out on the other end.
Now, Ken, I want to get your take on this. Since we don't live in Cleveland and we're here in Chicago, we don't get to hear the take on the whole controversy with that very sketchy picture of Johnny Manziel with a rolled up dollar bill. What is the word out there in Cleveland, like maybe with some calls you get on your show? Like, are you worried about that picture? Because to me, there's just no good in that picture, especially since it's in Vegas. What's the word out there?
Well, there's not a whole lot of pictures that are good when it comes down to Johnny Manziel. There's really nothing I can say. I mean, what does it look like? That's what they're not saying anything. Obviously, the Browns aren't saying anything. Johnny's not saying anything, and because of LeBron, it kind of hit the back burner there for a while. But it just doesn't look good. And the best way I can put it is that's the one that kind of concerns me. The picture on the Swan and some of the other stuff with him partying, and even the money phone. Hey, it's the NFL. Guys are going to have a good time. He hasn't played a game yet. He hasn't had a chance to play a game yet or prove himself in the NFL. But it's 6:10 Eastern time, it's 5:10 your time, it's Friday night. I guarantee you, especially with a week left until training camp gets heated up here, that there's some guys already maybe winding down, but there's definitely some guys getting ready to turn it up for one more weekend and go out there and get into some trouble and have some fun in their own way. So I'm not going to act like Johnny Manziel's the only guy that doesn't go out there and have some fun and get tuned up and do some crazy things. But when it comes to that and we start to draw our own conclusions about that, we get into the Josh Gordon saga here in Cleveland because there's a lot of, Rod's got to look at this. Pot's legal in Colorado, pot's legal in Washington. Well, if we're talking about rolled up dollar bills, then we start to infer about controlled substances. And I can try to rationalize it as a fan all I want and go, well, if I wanted to go up the Bears roster, or up and down the Jets roster, or up and down the Browns roster, I could tell you some guys that have probably done some drugs other than dope. It still doesn't make you feel any better about that. And plus, you've had 20 quarterbacks before, so it doesn't make you feel any better about that. Plus, as a fan, you've defended the guy over the last 3 months, so it still doesn't make you feel any better about that. This one's going to be on Johnny, where he's just got to go out there and prove himself. And the rationalization and some of the excuses that are made for him, that stuff goes out the window. Eventually, once these games start and once he begins to play, your voice, my voice, all the guys who out there, they're talking about it, those things get deafened out, and he's going to have to go out there and play in his own right. So he's setting himself up here for a lot of pressure.
And let's turn to the Tribe real quick. Do you think the Indians can have a good second half and possibly take down Detroit? Or do the Tigers already have this division locked down?
I think Detroit, because of their pitching's been kind of up and down, and Justin Verlander hasn't had the season of what people thought he was going to have. And when you pitch that many innings over the last couple of years, at some point it's going to start to taper off a little bit. But I really think Detroit has that locked up. And to see the Indians right now, you're 47-47. You're right there in the thicket of the wild card, but I don't see Detroit really coming back to you that much at all. Kansas City's a definite threat. Mm-hmm. I think Chicago and Minnesota with the White Sox, they might be retooling for next year. The best part that Chicago and Minnesota has is there's contracts on it, but there's ways that they can still build up. Right now, the Indians find themselves in a tough spot because you have Nick Swisher, who's done absolutely nothing for you this season. And He had one good month last year right before the postseason. So when you have that type of a player who's making that much money, it's hard to look at fans and say, well, you see, now we got to build this thing back up because it's going to be incredibly difficult when I have this albatross of a contract hanging around my lineup every single night, and I got to pay him because the Indians are in no position to pay him to go away. And there's not going to be any team out there that's going to take $15, $13 million over the next couple of years off his salary. So there's going to be a whole lot of just eating a lot of stuff that isn't going to taste very good to the Cleveland Indians over the next couple of years. And I think that might force them to make some moves to try to keep that window open, to try to keep a postseason window open, because 3.5 games out of the wild card and 60-plus games left to go. I mean, they're not out of it, and they've had a couple of bad pitching performances and some guys who were upsetting to us a little bit. Michael Brantley has just been incredibly strong for that team.
Right.
The pitching from Corey Kluber's been great.
Yes.
Cody Allen's been able to lock down in the closer role. So there's still some moves that they can make, but obviously, and it goes without saying, boys, the next week and a half, it's going to really tell the tale, and they're going to have to make some tough decisions on whether or not they really think they have a reputation to get back into the playoffs and a chance to get back into the playoffs. Because right now, over the last 10, 15 years, this organization has not been one to be counted on as far as making strong moves. So they are in a very tight spot that I didn't really think they would be in at this point.
Yeah, I also completely agree with that. And before we let you go, Ken, where can people find your work online and on the radio?
Oh, well, 923thefan.com, radio.com app. Driving through Cleveland, 92.3 The Fan on the FM dial.
Well, Ken, thank you for coming on to Friday Sports right here on SportsTownChicago.com, and we'd love to have you on again. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, boys, anytime. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Ken. And that was Ken Carman. If you're in Cleveland listening live, listen to him 6 to 10 p.m. on 92.3 The Fan, or if you're in Chicago or anywhere else not in the Cleveland area, it's on 92.3thefan.com, on the radio.com app, and on TuneIn under 92.3 The Fan. We will come back and discuss everything that Ken said, and we might have comedian Chad Zumock on if the scheduling can work. After this on the Friday Sports Riot. Hang on!
The Friday Sports Riot on SportsTownChicago.com. This is an official broadcast of Hoppy Radio. For more info, check out hoppyradio.com and hoppysworld.com.